Halliburton double team, shot clock at 4. Nembhard's got to put it up. Step back, his three-pointer. Bang! Nembhard knocks the three down. Timeout, Knicks.
Anthony attacks. Hibbert denies him at the rim. Block number 5 for the Pacers center.
Oh, what a play.
Miller for 3, and he got it. Reggie Miller with a clutch tray, and it's 105-102. And a steal. Miller retreats to the three-point line and hits again.
Tie game.
Reggie Miller made a 3, stole the ball, raced behind the three-point line, and hit again.
Look, I know people are like, aren't you worried about going back to New York City and calling a game? No. I've owned this city. I've owned this building. So why would I be worried about walking on out there?
Harper to get it in. Throws it to Ewing. Ewing surrounded. 2 seconds to shoot. He drives. He shoots. He missed. He missed. He missed. We ring the bell, baby. Ding dong. The witch is dead. And the Pacers have won it 97-95. And we're going to Disney World.
Hello, Pacer fans, and welcome to the Pacers Fever Show, your home for all things blue and gold. And today we will be talking about the biggest game that I think has ever been played in franchise history. It could be that big. I think you could make the argument for that. I'm excited to see what the Pacers have tonight as they tip off against the New York Knicks at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Your Pacers are rolling back into Gainbridge Fieldhouse with a 2-0 series lead over the New York Knicks. That's right. The Pacers are just 2 wins away from the NBA Finals, and the momentum is electric. But it's not just any day in Indianapolis. It's Indianapolis 500 day. It's Pacers Racers. Tyrese Halliburton's ready for it. It's the first experience that he'll have with the Pacers Racers. So that starts at 12:45. I believe the race is when the green flag is waved, and that race will start. And then people will slowly start to make their way over to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. An exciting weekend as the Fever played the Liberty yesterday, did suffer a heartbreaking loss to the Liberty, reigning WNBA champions. And we will talk about that on this show in another episode that I will be recording today, recapping that loss. But starting on Friday, it was an exciting time to be a Pacers fan, Fever fan, Indianapolis sports fan, because the Indiana Pacers went into Madison Square Garden and took a 2-0 lead and will head back home with quite an advantage and are only just 2 wins away. Sorry. Speaking like Yoda this morning, but just 2 wins away from knocking out the New York Knicks, the number 3 seed in this 2025 NBA playoffs. We got a jam-packed show today. We'll break down the Pacers and how they got here, what to watch for in Game 3, and how this team will keep the pressure on and push the Knicks to the brink of elimination. If they go up 3-0, that's going to be a really good feeling because it'll just take one more punch to knock this Knicks team out. So grab your checkered flags and your Pacers jersey. This is the Pacers Fever Show, and Indy is ready to make some history today. Buckle up, Pacers fans. Let's start those engines. Number 3 versus the number 4. Knicks versus Pacers. Pacers go on the road with the Knicks having home court advantage. Madison Square Garden was as electric as it can be. I don't think it's the Shaq said that the mystique in the Garden was not what he had expected. I think from what I had heard, Shaq had never been, I don't know if he'd never been in the Garden as far as like postseason or what he was talking about. I think it was postseason. So I don't think he's ever played in Madison Square Garden as a player in the postseason. And he'd heard all about this mystique because he made an illusion that he'd never played there. But that can't be right because they would have played there on their away games. I think he was talking more about the playoff experience that he was having been there and not ever played in the postseason as a player in the Garden. So this was his first experience. And he was talking about the fact, and if you don't know anything about what the idea is in behind Madison Square Garden, it's supposed to be the world's best arena, supposedly, allegedly. Sources can't confirm that. But you hear about how the reason why they dim the lights. So the lights are usually on as people are filing into their seats. And then the lights are turned down as the game begins, and it gives a very theatrical look to the stadium. They've got really cool lights up in the rafters and stuff that light up and sparkle in blue and orange. I've never been to the actual, like inside the actual arena. I've been outside of it. It's not the most appealing, but it's definitely got that historic feel to it, right? It's not a beautiful looking arena as some of these arenas have started to take some forms of some really beautiful looking buildings and architecture, but the garden itself is supposed to have this allure, this mystique about it. It's supposed to be a show when the Knicks are playing, and it's been it's fallen short of that this season, as far as the postseason is concerned, because they have a losing record in Madison Square Garden this postseason. They're under 500. These Knicks are. So it's not been the home mecca that they expected it to be. It hasn't been the advantage that they needed it to be. And the Pacers prove why the Madison Square Garden mystique is maybe a little bit of a myth at times. It's funny you talk about the Pacers having success on the road in the postseason. They've only lost 2 games in this postseason, one at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and then one on the road against the Milwaukee Bucks. So they've taken care of business on the road in a lot of these games, and the Pacers are very difficult to beat no matter where they play, and they don't really get caught up in the antics of the home crowd. I think it actually fuels them at times. They're one of those teams that feed off that negative energy from the other opposing fans, and to go in and play at Rocket Mortgage and I would even say Pfizer Forum to an extent is very ruckus. But to go into Rocket Mortgage and Madison Square Garden, who are supposed to be 2 of the best fan bases, most rowdy when it comes to the Eastern Conference, the Pacers have handled themselves extremely well. And even when looking like they've been knocked out and down on the mat in these games on the road, they come back in mysterious ways and they win these games. So the magic is alive. We keep getting called the team of destiny, which is always a good sign because that means you're doing things right. And, I got some nice comments on Twitter and on my last YouTube video of Pacer fans and, neutral fans saying, don't let the negative stuff impact us so much as a fan base. We deserve this respect. We know what we are as a fan base. We know that we're outnumbered against pretty much any team that we go up against, because our fan base is a lot smaller than probably most are, just because we're a small market team. But again, I think just because I want the respect for these Pacers because they deserve it, because they're such great people, great humans. You go up and down this list of the team and you just find absolutely humbled individuals. And I think that's what makes me mad, is that the disrespect thrown at them is like these guys are monsters at times, when that's not true at all, especially Tyrese Halliburton. I don't think people understand just how good of a human he is. And there's a reason why most people in the NBA, besides the 12 people that voted him most overrated, want to play with him. You just ask Pascal Siakam. You ask Joel Embiid, even though he said he doesn't want to come to Indianapolis, he said he does like playing with Tyrese. You've got guys texting Reese after the games. You know just how special he is when a guy like Jason Tatum has taken him kind of under his wing since Tatum has been eliminated. He's been sending messages to Tyrese, and Tyrese has talked about just the support he's gotten from his U.S. Basketball teammates. I mean, guys like LeBron, Jason, they're reaching out to Ty because he's just so likable, and players really enjoy. He's just a happy person. He loves playing basketball. He doesn't think of it as a job. He doesn't think of it as a way to get paid. This guy just loves basketball, and where he's come from, he's always been underrated. In the places that he's been, he wasn't sought after in the draft as highly as some of these other guys in his draft class. He was not thought of as much of a recruit coming out of high school and going to Iowa State and performing pretty well there, but not, setting the world on fire. Comes into the NBA, and the Kings really did a nice job of developing Tyrese early on. And that big trade that happens between the Pacers and Kings, I thought benefited both teams at the time. But, you long-winded to say that these guys are such good guys that it's easy to root for them. And I think the rest of the world is starting to figure that out. You hear Charles and Shaq talking about Tyrese, and Shaq even made a poor and ill-timed comment, I thought, talking about how Tyrese is always smiling because Reggie was interviewing him in that pre-game show, and they play this interview, and Reggie was talking to Ty about just his humble beginnings, and it's the same thing with Reggie. I mean, you look at these two guys, and their storylines are eerily similar. I mean, they are uh, unorthodox in the way that they shoot the basketball. They are people that were passed on by other organizations. They were and are constantly called overrated. I mean, Reggie during his time, and it's too bad Reggie never won a championship, and he has been very close to winning championships. I thought that he could have gotten one with that team that was with the Malice and the Palace. I thought that was his real chance, even though he did make a finals against the Lakers. I just felt like going up against Shaq and Kobe and that team, that was not going to go well. And I don't think we expected to really win that one. But, I feel like Reggie and Tyrese, for their whole careers, even throughout high school into college, you're too small. You're not big enough on the offensive end. You can't score at the level that we would need you to. Your physical appearance and physicality is going to hold you back, right? I mean, Tyrese is 6'5", but he's very very thin compared to some of these bruising point guards that you see nowadays. Same thing with Reggie, right? I think I even heard, I think it was Chuck said that he even looks like Reggie, like that potato head on a stick kind of thing. But they embrace being the villain, and that was something that was discussed pregame, game 2 in this Eastern Conference Finals, was who's the bigger villain at this point? Is it Reggie or is it going to be Tyrese Halliburton? Because Tyrese has gone in 2 out of the last 3 games in the Garden and has been a terror, as I think it was Spiro Deeds that called him that. I wish that nickname is a really great nickname, like Tyrese the Terror. I love that so much because it's true. I mean, he imposes his will. He scares offenses, and even when he's not scoring a ton of points, just the things that he does, there's a terror element to that. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun listening to the conversation as time goes on, and the Pacers are starting to turn heads. I mean, you got Colin Cowherd saying they're the best NBA team in the playoffs that's left. Tim Legler saying that an OKC Indiana series would be a massive get for the NBA, even though it might not show up in the ratings because those are two small fan bases. You're still going to get 2 superstars, and I would call Tyrese superstar at this point. I know a lot of people disagree with that outside of the Indiana circle, but I do. I mean, the things that he can do on the floor are superstar level things. He's able to impact an offense in a way that only 10 or 8 guys can do in this league. And people are like, well, you rate him that high? I mean, there's a great argument as to why he could be rated in the top 10 of an NBA player in this league, because of just how special he is and gifted he is in running an offense that, they talked about how historic that offense was last year, and the most historic offensive rating team in the history of the NBA. And then you look at this postseason and they're the best offensive team left and have been an absolute nightmare for every defense that's run into them. Very good defenses, right? I think you can attribute most, if not all of that, to what Tyrese Halliburton is able to do. And I'm not saying that the other players don't have anything to do with how good they are offensively. They do. What I'm saying is, without Tyrese Halliburton at 100%, this team is nowhere close to what they are. So much props to KP, right? Ted Wu, the Simons, Chad Buchanan, the guys that have built this team have just, it's been extraordinary to watch, right? Because I think you look at just what they've done in the last couple of years to bring Rick Carlisle in, right? Jenny Busick has been a huge get for the Pacers, and I hope that she doesn't go anywhere, because I feel like there's going to be WNBA teams calling, there's going to be NBA teams calling about Jenny at points, and you can't always hold on to really good coaches, and you want to see her flourish and go in places where I think that she could be a top head coach in either league. But just the confidence that she has given to, and you can see it in her interactions with these players, because Rick is not totally animated in a way that he's like always pumping these guys up during the game. But you can hear Jenny during these games screaming at the guys. getting them pumped up. And I think that's a type of coach that you need on this staff, right? Like you got Matt Weiner, who's really good. Lloyd Pierce is a really good coach. Jenny is like the spokesperson, I would say, I guess, for what the Pacers are all about, especially on the defensive end, because she is so talented and she's the one that comes up with that. I think it was like that offensive spread, that football style play that the Pacers run on inbounds. But again, I just the ability of Jenny Busick and this coaching staff behind Rick Carlisle, I think that goes underrated. And it just Tyrese talked about it, and Miles has talked about it, just how much Tyrese has meant to this franchise and his happiness. Miles Turner, in a really tough spot where if Tyrese doesn't arrive, I don't pass this contract, I don't think Miles stays. Now I think it's a priority of the franchise. It's a priority for the Pacer Sports and Entertainment Group to get Miles to stay in Indiana, because I just don't feel like there is a person that embodies Indiana more than Miles Turner. And if there is, then that person's name is Tyrese Halliburton. He's come from the Midwest. He's from Wisconsin, Milwaukee area. He knows what it means to this fan base. And he talked about this with Kevin Garnett when he was talking to Kevin Garnett in one of those interviews where Kevin was like, I spent a lot of my time in Minnesota. And Tyrese said, how do you get players? Like, how do you convince? You could just tell Tyrese every time he talks to somebody, he's trying to pick their brains. And that's, that shows a lot of maturity where he knows and I mean, the way that he's owned up to some of his mistakes in his time with the Pacers is really something that's honorable. And I think as you watch Tyrese, you understand just how good of a human he is and how much he's willing to learn. But he was asking Kevin Garnett in that interview, how do you convince other guys to come play with you? And Kevin Garnett says, pretty much, you don't have to say anything. It helps obviously to have those conversations with people, but the way that you play, when guys see the way that you play, they're going to want to play with you. If you're a winning team and you're having fun and that energy is fun and that fan base is great, guys are going to want to play with you no matter where you're playing. And I think that says a lot, because I do think that in today's NBA, you do have less, which I think has helped not having these mega teams. I think there is a push to get guys to other teams that maybe they didn't necessarily consider. I mean, you got Kevin Durant right now in Phoenix. That probably doesn't happen in the big three era, because they would just jump between big market teams. But Tyrese is just like, what do you do to get guys to come play with you? And there's a reason why Pascal Siakam had the Pacers as one of the two teams that he wanted to go to if he was traded. He wanted to play with Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton, which is saying a lot, because you don't think of Miles being the one that people watch and go, I want to go play with that guy. But the things that Miles does and just what he embodies as a Pacer, what Tyrese has embodied as a Pacer since he's come over, that's what makes this team go. And I'm just so happy. This is 20 minutes in the podcast. We haven't started the preview, but I just wanted to get that off my chest, because I felt like it's needed. I think people need to hear that, because there is an appreciation for this Pacer team. You just got to go out and try to find it. And so as much as we get wrapped up in what the Knicks fans are saying on X, or Bucks and Cavs fans are saying from their vacation spots because they don't have to watch basketball because their teams aren't in the playoffs anymore, I think we've got to look past that, and I've got to do a better job of looking past that, just because we are who we are. We know who we are as a fan base. The players know who they are. We are always going to be underdog. I think even if the Pacers go on to challenge for an NBA Finals or an NBA championship, even if they win an NBA championship, I think there's still going to be conversations of like, this team got gift drafted a championship, which I don't know how that's going to be possible. So, because you've got a healthy Knicks team now, and they should face a healthy Wolves or OKC team should they get to the NBA Finals and close this series out, which is, there's still a long way to go. But I enjoy that finally it seems that the national media is saying this Pacer team is not only good, they're great, they're historic, they're special, they're a team of destiny. But that just doesn't end this year. That will continue on as long as Tyrese Halliburton is an Indiana Pacer. As long as Nesmith or a Nemhard are on this Pacer team, as Pascal Siakam is on this team, and as he passes the torch over to possibly like a Jarris Walker or whoever that might be coming up in the future, or whoever they consolidate to get maybe in this offseason or off seasons coming up, or if Herb Simon decides to go into the luxury tax of that first apron where, it's not a huge tax and I feel like they could do it. Keeping this core together or keeping this group intact for the most part, this team's competitive window, when healthy, probably goes for, with this current construction of the lineup, with the way the East is looking, I would say for 3 years, you have a real legitimate shot, like past this year. So I think this year, yes, but I think 3 more years after this. So I guess a 4-year window, technically, if you're considering this year. I think there's a 4-year window because with Jason Tatum injured and probably out for the rest of the season, next season, the Celtics are taken down from their perch. I think the Cavs are going to do some shifting, and who knows if they're going to be as good next year. I still think the Pacers are a better team than the Cavs right now. The Bucks are in this really awful spot with Giannis. I feel like that's going to blow up at any time, whether that's this offseason or it's coming up at the trade deadline. I feel like Giannis's time is very limited. Even he can say all he wants about staying in Milwaukee, but when this team isn't playing well, he's going to leave. Damian Lillard out next season, right? So you start to think about who else is going to compete. This Knicks team, should they get bounced by the Pacers, they're going to make a big move. I think it'll make, I think this team will look totally different than what they were this season. But I also think the Knicks aren't going to be as deep. You're getting depth, like acquiring depth takes years. Like it takes a lot of time because you have to have good draft picks, and the Knicks don't have that. They just traded all their draft picks to the Nets. The Knicks are in a really weird spot. If they get eliminated in this round, like they're in a real tough spot because they're paying Mikal Bridges a ton of money, OG Anunoby a ton of money, Karl Anthony Towns a ton of money, Brunson a ton of money. Josh Hart is kind of in this no man's land. And then you've got nobody really besides Mitch on the bench that's really helping. And I could see them flipping him for a bigger player. So I think if a team approaches the Knicks about Karl Anthony Towns in the offseason, I think a Mikal Bridges or an OG Anunoby or a Karl Anthony Towns are going to have to be involved in those trades because the Knicks don't have any draft capital. You've got to flip great players for other great players. I could see Kevin Durant as a Knick. I really could. But that's going to require a total teardown, I think, of this current roster that the Knicks have. And again, you had Kevin Durant. He's not great defensively. So the Knicks are in a real bad spot, I feel, too. So you look at it, Knicks not in a good spot. If they get eliminated, especially in this round, they're not in a good spot. Thibodeau's probably gone, I would imagine. The Bucks, I'm shocked, have not fired Doc Rivers. If they keep Doc Rivers around, that's just a added bonus for the Pacers. The Bucks, I don't think they're going to be as competitive as they have been because I think Giannis is on his way out soon. You've got the Cavs, who are a good team. They are. I think they could probably be the ones that really challenge the Pacers. The Pistons, I think the Pistons are a move away from being really competitive. And with Cade Cunningham, they're going to be a good challenge for the Pacers in that Central Division and in the Eastern Conference. But you look outside of that, and you don't really. I mean, Boston's really going to struggle without Jason Tatum. They're going to have to go make a move, I think, and they're going to have to consolidate some of that money because they're going to be paying out the ear for a lot of these guys because of Brown's contract, Holiday's contract. What do you do with Derek White's? Kevin, or not Kevin. I'm about to say Kevin Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard on the bench. Like, does he ever get antsy and want to move and kind of move into a starting role, which I think he could. So you look across the board in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the Eastern Conference, the Pacers have a huge opportunity here for the next 3, 4, 5 years because of just how well they're built. And with their contracts that they have, with Aaron Nesmith on a very limited contract, but a couple of years left, Nembhard just signed an extension, I think, for 3 years. Turner is the free agent that we have to address, but I think the Pacers pay him. I think they make room. However they're going to make room, that'll be the question. They can get creative with that, whether it's consolidating, and we'll talk more about who they might shift off. But I think you're starting to see it become more clear in this playoffs who's kind of the odd man out right now is, as we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, the Pacers are in a very good competitive window, and I think the national media realizes this, and the league realizes this. Should they not win an NBA championship, this is probably the best chance they've ever had in their history in the NBA to win a title. I think that they are set up to make a run at this Eastern Conference Finals round for years to come. Like, I think it'd be disappointing if healthy if they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals in the next couple of years as the East is kind of opened up for them to take advantage of. So we will see. We will see what that looks like. But I mean, you got to feel really good if you're a Pacers fan, and crazy things have happened, injuries happen, and stuff like that. But you really like what you're saying, and they're up 2-0 on the New York Knicks. And let's talk about Game 3. So that was my 25-minute discussion about just how great it's been and how the Pacers have got to where they are and now where they stand currently in the Eastern Conference. Because I think that they are a special team that is got the league. They've got the league on notice. So Game 3 is tonight, Sunday, May 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game 4 will be Tuesday, May 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Game 5, if needed, Pacers at Knicks. They go back to Madison Square Garden Thursday, May 29th, 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game 6, if needed, would be on Saturday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Saturday, May 31st, 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. And then Game 7, should it be needed, Pacers at Knicks, Monday, June 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. 2-0 lead stats. I want to get into that as we move and segue our way into what to expect in Game 3. I want to talk about what a 2-0 lead typically means for the teams involved. Teams that have lost their first 2 games at home in the conference finals are 0-17 in those series. The Knicks would make history if they come back to advance past these Pacers. Could they do it? I do think they could. Will it be very difficult? Yes, because they've got to win 4 of 5 games, which is extremely difficult to do against this Pacer team because the Pacers have only lost twice in the postseason. So typically Pacers lose, on average, 1 game per series. They've beaten the Bucks and the Cavs in 5 games. They're looking to do the same thing to the New York Knicks. In 465 playoff series, the team leading the series 2-0 has advanced 431 times. That's 92.7% of the time. Only 34 teams have come back to advance, and these Pacers were the team that did that. The only difference was last year against these Knicks was that the Knicks won their first 2 games at home. Pacers win their next 2 games at home, and then from there, best of 3 series, the Pacers end up winning Game 7 in the Garden to knock out the New York Knicks, which was an impressive win after a team has been through that playoffs and that postseason where they were inexperienced in what they were doing. In the conference finals, 60 of 66 teams up 2-0 have advanced. 90% of the time, those teams move on. So that's a really big number as well. All stats indicate that the Pacers should move on. Now, that being said, what to expect for Game 3, you're going to see the most desperate version of this Knicks team that you've seen. And the Pacers have dropped both Game 3s in the last 2 series. So in Game 3 against Milwaukee, Pacers up 2-0. They go into Milwaukee. Milwaukee stomps them at home, making it a 2-1 series. Pacers are trying to fight for a 3-1 lead and do in Game 4 as they stomp out the Bucks. And that pretty much, I felt like, ended the series, even though they weren't great in Game 5 and had to come back to win that game. Still felt like the Pacers were inevitably going to win that series, even if they dropped Game 5. But they didn't. They came back to win it in that weird comeback game once again. Game 3 against the Cavs, back home in Indiana, had taken the first 2 on the road, again after a stunning win in Game 2 with Tyrese Halliburton making that infamous step back 3 over Ty Jerome and coming back with, after trailing 7 points in the last 40 seconds of the game, another improbable comeback in Game 2 of the Cavs series. Going to Game 3, got comfortable. I think they just felt too comfortable. They knew all they had to do was really get 1 game at home, and a 3-1 series is really difficult. But you can't think like that. I think if you're a real champion, you got to think, let's go in and break their backs in Game 3, like give them no hope at all. If you go up 3-0 in a series, that team then has to win 4 straight games, and that's improbable. It just doesn't happen. I don't think it's ever happened in the NBA. I think it's gotten to a Game 7 from what I remember. I think that was a Mavs series for some reason. But yeah, this game is easily the biggest game, I think, in Pacers history. And I believe it's the biggest game ever played by the New York Knicks in their history. So, and I think because the teams that are fighting for the finals, none of them have been there. So and what I mean by like the current constructed roster has never been there. Like OKC, none of their players have really been there. I think the Wolves, I think the same thing. I don't think anybody's ever played in the NBA Finals on that side. I'm trying to think of like their bench players. I don't believe so. I don't think OKC either. I'm trying to think of if they have any. I don't believe. The Pacers have Pascal, who's played in an NBA championship, and Aaron Nesmith was on the Boston team. I think that was in the championship. And then the Knicks have Anunoby, who's been in the championship. So very limited experience in being in the NBA Finals for anybody on any of these rosters. So that being said, this is the biggest series that any of these teams have ever played in their franchise's history, which is really cool. I mean, you don't usually get that, but those are 4 budding superstars, or not even budding superstars. Jalen Brunson's already at the superstar level. Anthony Edwards is a superstar. Shea's easily a superstar. He's the MVP of this league. And then the Pacers, I do believe, have the blooming superstar in Tyrese Halliburton, because he's 25 years old and he's not hit his prime. And I do think he does superstar things. Yeah. So this is the biggest game for both of these teams that they've ever played. And I think it's because the reason why I'm saying that is because the road to an NBA championship's probably, I wouldn't say it's easy. That's not fair to these teams, but I think it's the easiest it's ever been, as far as there's no team left that's experienced in what they're doing. Right. All of this is new territory for these teams. It's new territory for the Pacers to be up in the Eastern Conference Finals with this core. It's new territory for the Knicks, who have never been to the Eastern Conference Finals with this core. The Oklahoma City Thunder, same thing, never been to this level in the Western Conference Finals. And same thing with Minnesota, having a really good shot to beating an inexperienced Oklahoma City team after stomping them in Game 3. They look like they're going to get back in this series. So I think you're in uncharted territory for a lot of these teams, and that's exciting. And that brings a lot of good storylines to the NBA Finals, whatever teams end up there. And the Pacers have a really good head start. They've got a 2-0 lead going back home in a place where they don't typically lose a whole lot. So the energy is going to be through the roof for this Game 3 against the Knicks. But before we get into the actual game, one more thing that I want to do is just talk about what have the Pacers done, and why have they gotten to this Game 3 up 2-0 after playing 2 games on the road? Why have they been so dominant on the road? What has made this team really tick? So if you're listening to this and you're really not a Pacers fan, maybe you're a neutral fan, or you're a Knicks fan, wanting to go, what in the world's happening? And this is fun for me, because everybody that's been eliminated by the Pacers is trying to figure out why the Pacers and how the Pacers beat them. Well, let me tell you, they are 10-2 in these 2025 playoffs. That is an 83% winning percentage. Sorry. They've scored 119.1 points per game. The only team that has beat or has scored more were the Cavs, and that's because they absolutely destroyed that Miami Heat team that decided that they were just going to come up and just at least just show up and just stand out there and let them score a ton of points, and had I think it was the biggest plus minus differential in league history was the Cavs versus the Heat. So they're propped up by huge wins, where the Pacers have had a much more competitive series than the Cavs had. So 119.1 points per game. They're the best offensive team left in these playoffs. The next best team would be the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they're third in these playoffs, 115.8 points per game. So the Pacers have outscored the Thunder. And people will argue, well, the West is better defensively. I wouldn't necessarily say that, because the Cavs have been a really good defensive team. They had a defensive player of the year. Blah. And then the Bucks are no slouches when it comes to defending, especially with having Giannis out there. And typically a pretty decent defender in Brook Lopez, I'd say, but way too slow. So they weren't as good defensively as they have been in past years. But the Pacers have not done this against teams that are, I would say the Knicks are pretty bad off or defensively. But again, they didn't rank that bad in the regular season. So Pacers got the advantage there. You have to go all the way down to the 5th spot for the Knicks, who are 109 points per game. And then right after them are the Minnesota Timberwolves at 108.9 points per game. Field goals made in this postseason, the Pacers lead that one at 43.8. Field goals made per game in the playoffs in those 12 games. The field goals attempted, OKC leads that one at 92. They get a lot of opportunities because they cause a lot of problems defensively. Field goal percentage, the Pacers are way ahead of the rest of the pack in this one at 50%. They're shooting 50% from the field in 12 games in the playoffs, which is unheard of. It's historic in so many ways. You have to go all the way down to the 4th spot to find the next team in the playoffs, and that's the Minnesota Timberwolves at 46.2. Last night really helped. They shot the ball extremely well last night. Number 5 is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder. They're fun and thunder. 45.7% in the playoffs, and then the Knicks 45.2% in the 7th spot. 3-pointers made. Now, this one's interesting because the Pacers are not necessarily seen as the best 3-point shooting team. They do shoot it at a high percentage when they shoot it, but they don't usually shoot a whole lot of them. And they still don't shoot a whole lot of them as compared to some of the other teams in the NBA playoffs. I think they're actually one of the lowest if not the lowest that are left besides the Knicks, I think. So the Pacers have made 14.1 3-pointers per game. That is best for 4th in the playoffs, and every single team above them has been eliminated because you had the Cavs, Bucks, and Celtics, and the Celtics shoot about 300 of them a game. So the Pacers have made the most 3-pointers compared to the teams left. You have to go all the way down to the 8th spot to find the Minnesota Timberwolves at 13. Number 9, and this is one that shocked me because they always talk about how good of a 3-point shooting team Oklahoma City is, and that's what's kept them in games. I mean, obviously they hit those shots outside of Shea, but you always think of them, and I think you think of them if you don't watch many of their games because they don't shoot as many 3-pointers as some of these other teams do. I think you think of them as like they're a really good shooting team because of like Lou Dort, and you just think and Jalen Williams, like you just think of these guys as like, oh man, they're a good 3-point shooting, but they actually don't make as many. They make 12.2 per game, and they only attempt 37.6. So they're not up there with the likes of like Cleveland, Boston, Milwaukee. They shoot a good amount, but they've actually not hit at the percentage I think that they would at least like to. They're actually really struggling if you look at what their 3-point percentage is, because if you're looking at 3-point percentage, they are in this playoffs the 13th worst team in these playoffs out of the 16 teams that have made it. Obviously, the teams below them didn't play out of the first round, but that being said, the Thunder are only shooting 32.4% from 3-point arc, which isn't good because if Shea's not creating shots at the rim, then where are they going to get that scoring? And that's what happened last night. I think he was under 20 points. I think he had 14 points against the Wolves in game 3 last night. So, yeah, I was shocked to learn that. I honestly was. I thought OKC were just great from 3-point land, but they have not been in these playoffs. Now, free throws made, this is where a lot of the OKC Thunder points come from. They're the best team in the playoffs left in making free throws. They do get a lot of attempts as well, and that's due in fact to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I got used to saying that. That's a mouthful. Number 5 is the Knicks at 18.8. I'm sorry, I didn't say the number. OKC's 19.3 free throws made per game. Knicks at 18.8. A lot of Jalen Brunson there. You have to go all the way down to the 10th spot to find the Pacers, and they've made 17.5. They've really struggled to shoot from the free throw line, I thought. But if you look at their percentages, they're pretty even with the Thunder, and they're actually a better shooting percentage from the free throw line than the Knicks. The Knicks just get 3 more attempts per game. The Wolves are number 11, 76.8. They're not really a great free throw shooting team. I mean, you look up and down their roster, they do tend to struggle from the 3-point or the free throw line. So, and that's just a lot of their personnel aren't great free throw shooters. So, yeah, OKC has the advantage there. Rebounding, I'll go to that one too, because this is where the Pacers really struggle. And we know this. We knew this coming into the playoffs. I think their biggest weakness is probably rebounding, to be honest with you. Like, if you're going to beat the Pacers, it's probably on the glass. So, and I'm talking about like you're going to beat them on the glass, but like you can really take advantage of this Pacer team, I think, rebounding the basketball. Now, they haven't been crazy awful like they were last season, but they've still not been great. So OKC actually is a really good rebounding team that has a lot to do with Chet Hartenstein, and their guards rebound pretty well. I mean, Caruso, he rebounds well for a guard. And he's been on a lot of bigs. Like he guarded Jokic at times. It was weird. But they're 44.8 and rebounding. And then you have to go all the way down to number 9, 10, and 11 to find the rest of the teams that are in the finals, the conference finals. Sorry. Knicks 42.9, Minnesota 42.5, and the Pacers at 40.5. So yeah, that's where the Pacers sit as far as rebounding. We looked at the offensive side of things, the rebounding, the 3-point shooting, points per game. I guess the other one that I'll look at, turnovers. OKC is really good at hanging on the basketball, and that's because of Shea. He's very good at that. 11.3 turnovers per game, which is the best in the playoffs, but the Pacers are right behind them at 12.1 turnovers, and they sit 4th. So again, turnover battles are going to be really big. That possession is going to be really big in the rest of these games and into the NBA playoffs, or sorry, the NBA finals. And then one last thing that I did want to look at, because I think it's worth mentioning when you're talking about the Pacers, because we already talked about, I mean, their offensive rating is through the roof at 118.9. Defensive rating is really good at 13.8. Not really good, but much better than I think we thought it would probably be. And they're playing against a really good Cavs offense and a really good Knicks offense. But it's been the defensive struggles of both of those teams that allowed the Pacers to just be much better. But yeah, the reason why I want to look at pace is because that's what the Pacers want to do. They want to speed you up. And something that I found that was interesting is, and we'll see, should this be the NBA Finals matchup? Should it be OKC and the Pacers? I think having two really fast teams is going to make this a really fire. This is going to be a fire series. No, this is going to be a really great series if it does end up being that, because of the pace. It's going to be so fast. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 100.54 for pace, and then the Pacers are 98.38. I think a lot of the pace that the Pacers, I mean, I feel like the Pacers numbers would be up there with OKC, probably even higher, but they've played two teams that are just, they don't want to run. I don't feel like Cleveland, I mean, they like to run, but they're not running like the Pacers and Thunder are. And then the Knicks, they don't like to run. So it's really kind of bogged down these games. And with all the free throws that have happened with Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, I think that's actually had a huge impact on the way that the Pacers have been able to push the tempo. And Shea's going to be that way too. And I think it'll slow down the pace of the game a little bit because of him. But they do like to get out and run. And a lot of reasons why he gets fouled is because he gets out in transition and you get mixed up on assignments because he's running full steam ahead at the rim. So I don't know. It'll be interesting because those are two very fast-paced teams, but 2 and 3 in the playoffs as far as pace is concerned. And like I said, you have to drop all the way down to number 8 and 9 to find the Wolves and Knicks. So two contrasting styles, I believe. The Knicks, much more half-court heavy. Minnesota, big time as far as half-court, because they're a good defensive team too. The Wolves are the third best team. The Oklahoma City Thunder are the first team as far as defensive rating. Now, that being said, if you look at the pace of play for the Nuggets, they're 7th. So while they do get out and run some, they weren't really known for pushing that pace. So I think that's where that's going to help Oklahoma City Thunder set their defense. And then against the Grizzlies, while they were the fastest paced team, the offense is just awful for the Grizzlies. So I think that stat is inflated some for Oklahoma City. They're a good defensive team. I think that's where they have the advantage over the Pacers. They're a better defensive team than the Pacers. But I wouldn't go as far as to say is and their depth is really good, but I think the Pacers can match their depth. They're the only team left, I think, that can match their depth. Although Minnesota got a really good performances from their bench yesterday. So we will see. But I did want to just talk about that as what the Pacers have done in this playoffs because they've been a special team. And that's why their offense is just a historic offense. And I think what you can tell other fans as to why the Pacers beat you is one, their depth, but two, their shot making ability is just it's exhausting. It has to be because I mean, even they love to get a shot off. I think they said the Pacers are most effective, obviously, when they get their shot off in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. But that being said, they've been one of the best half court offenses in this playoffs, and it's because everybody can hit you from every direction, right? I mean, you got Ben Shepherd hitting threes, TJ McConnell slicing and dicing up your offense. Obi Toppin can get to the rack. He can finish at the mid range. He can hit threes as well. You've got Thomas Bryant who can hit threes at times. He can also put back different shots. You got Pascal Siakam who can play anywhere on the court. Miles Turner, same kind of thing. Aaron Nesmith, same thing. Andrew Dimhard is a different person when he comes to the postseason. He's one of the best 3-point shooting guards in the postseason and the worst in the regular season. So it's really fascinating. He's like something you could study probably. But and then Tyrese Halliburton again can create and shoot from wherever. So this Pacer team is just so hard to defend. OKC, I think, similar in certain degrees. I think there are some of them that do struggle. I think you can get Chet to have a pretty off game by just getting more physical with him. Hartenstein's not going to shoot from anywhere. He doesn't really like to shoot anywhere except that little floater thing he does in the lane. And then Shea, you force him to shoot threes. Like that's where I think you beat OKC is you just shorten it. If he's going to hit shots, then they're going to beat you. But like you got to make him shoot. You can't let him get in the paint. But yeah, Pacers, they just frustrate teams because of how efficient they are. Their true shooting percentage is through the roof. I think it's over 60%, which is unheard of. So that's what the Pacers do. They just wear you down. And the Knicks, we talked about this going into the series last season, and it's true this season. By the time you get to games 3, 4, 5, like if it does get to a game 5, I'd be interested to see just what the energy level is for the Knicks heading back home. Because having one day in between each game is rough on this Knicks team because they only play 7, maybe 6 guys at times. And that's really tough on them because they're just a little bit of an older team, more experienced, but their guys just don't like to run and they rely heavily on their shooting. The Knicks do. A lot of Karl Anthony Towns shots, OG Anunoby shots. Mikal Bridges will shoot a ton. He doesn't get to the rim too much. They rely a lot on jump shots. Brunson relies heavily on people don't realize how exhausting the way Jalen Brunson plays is. Like trying to constantly beat up a defender by taking him to the rim, it wears your body out. Even though he's very good at hitting those mid-range, you can actually see in the fourth quarter his shooting percentages go down because I think he's exhausted by the time, and he's a great clutch player. He'll hit big shots, but there are times where you can just tell the legs are gone from under these Knicks players, and it's because Thibodeau refuses to get his bench involved. And right now is not the time to try to figure out how to put depth into your team because you're going to start playing guys that don't ever really play. I am shocked they haven't really tried to, at least spell guys like Kolek or Precious Achua. I would have thought at least like 3 minutes, man. That's all they need. Like sometimes is especially because these TV timeouts and regular timeouts, just throw one of those guys in there before the half or at the end of a quarter. Like there's got to be something that he can do, but he's just so reluctant to go to anybody outside of the 7. And sometimes not even because he does tend to give up on Josh Hart quite a bit now. So we will see what the Knicks do as far as lineups changes. That leads into my next talking point is what adjustments are made for game 3. I think with the Knicks, the biggest conversation has been Mitchell Robinson. What do you do with him? Because I think to slow the Pacers down, they're going to have to insert him into a rotation where he's playing a lot more minutes. That being said, I think he went 16 straight minutes played in the second half of game 2, and he just ran out of steam. And Tony Bradley did a really nice job for the, I think, 8 minutes that he played in game 2 to really stifle Mitchell Robinson. Because if Mitchell Robinson isn't getting offensive rebounds, he's a good defender. I'll give him that. He's a really good defender. But aside from that, he will not give you anything offensively. And he's actually a liability at times. And as good of a defender as he is, I don't think he's a great communicator. And when he's on the court with Karl Anthony Towns, that is not a good lineup because they do not communicate very well and they don't defend very well. Like Karl Anthony Towns actually takes away, I think, from the effectiveness Robinson has because he has to cover his back. Karl Anthony Towns will lose a Pascal Siakam because I think Mitchell, when he's in and he's in with Karl Anthony Towns, his assignment would probably, I would say, probably be more geared towards Miles Turner. And Turner's just going to bring you out to the 3-point line. And then Siakam will just eat Karl Anthony Towns alive. So, and then if they switch that, Turner could eat Karl Anthony Towns alive. So it's not a good mix, that lineup. And there was a lot of good talk around the Knicks. When your superstar players don't make each other better, that's not a good team. That's not an effectively built team. I think it was Legler that said this. And Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, I would argue that Towns does not make Brunson better. Like, what does Towns do that helps Brunson? Really nothing. Like, he gives him a little bit of breathing air as far as like not having to score every time he goes down there, because Towns will. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing that they do that they play off each other real well. Like, they really don't. So that's a big problem for the Knicks, and that's not something they're going to be able to fix until the offseason. So that's where they really struggle. And I love this discussion because there were people that are Knicks writers / podcasters that are, their sources confirmed. I don't know if they have real sources. They're just speaking probably because they think this is going to happen. Sorry, I got a cough here. Excuse me. Yeah, there are sources out there that say that the Knicks are heavily considering moving Mitchell Robinson into the starting 5 and removing Josh Hart from the starting 5. While that is on paper and probably to the eye a better lineup and have performed at times better than the Josh Hart included lineup, I think you're asking Mitchell Robinson to do things that he hasn't done all season in starting games. He really hasn't played a ton of games this year. Had the injury last year, had some injury problems this year. So you're asking him to exhaust himself for the first half. And I think with just the way the Pacers play, Mitchell Robinson is less effective the more tired he gets, because it's exhausting to try to get offensive rebounds for 30 some minutes. Like, that's all he does is try to get offensive rebounds. So I think that's exhausting for him. To ask him to do that, I don't see where that works. It would kind of just be the same lineup. You're just switching them at the times in which they appear. Like, Mitchell Robinson would appear with the starting lineup, but the way that the Pacers operate offensively, I think that's a nightmare for Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson is actually better against more of the second unit, where Pascal's playing a 4 and Obi's playing a 5 because of the size. But if you're throwing Mitchell Robinson out there against Pascal and Miles, one, he's seeing more size. It's not great rebounding that Miles Turner is going to offer you, but at least Miles Turner is out there to try to at least alleviate some of that, and he's lengthier, so he's going to at least get some of those balls that maybe Toppin doesn't get. So I don't know. It's a fun game, I think, for the Knicks to play, because they think, well, let's just insert Mitchell Robinson because that lineup's been good. But I want to talk about that. I pulled this stat and I had to go back and check, because like, really, they've only appeared in 2 games together? Yeah, this lineup's only appeared in 2 games together, and that's crazy because they played 12 games total, I think, in the playoffs. No, 14. Sorry, the Pacers played 12. The Knicks, I think, have played 14 games in this playoffs, and this lineup has only appeared for 3.4 minutes per game in those 2 games that they did appear. And that's the Towns, Anunoby, Bridges, Brunson, and Mitchell Robinson lineup, because a lot of times Mitchell will spell Karl Anthony Towns. The lineup itself, 6 points per game in those 2 games, so not great. They shoot 41%, not great. Really bad, actually. 3-pointers made per game, none. They've attempted, I think, 1 in total in those 2 games with this line. Like, they don't shoot a whole ton of threes with this lineup, because really the only threes are going to come from Brunson, Anunoby, and Bridges. It's just such a small sample size that it's not even, I don't even know it's worth considering. But like, even in the 2 games that it has appeared, I think that's enough saying that the Knicks really don't deploy this lineup. This lineup doesn't ever really play together. So this is when you're going to try it in desperation, and that typically doesn't work. When you respond with when you respond to desperation with totally new things, it doesn't typically go well, especially lineups like this. And people are always like, "Well, it's an easy fix." Not necessarily. I mean, you then mess up the rotation coming off the bench because then Josh Hart comes in and he's playing with the unit that he doesn't typically play with, probably. So, and I know that they keep their rotation short, so hell, they all play together most of the time. But it is fascinating to me that they only ever play 7 to 8 guys in total in these series, and that this lineup that people want them to switch to has only appeared twice. And it's because they know how much of a problem it is. Because no matter what you do, even if you add a really good defensive player to a lineup, you still have two very bad defenders in Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. And when you have two bad defenders, you can't hide both of them. You can hide one bad defender usually in an NBA lineup, but you cannot hide two of them. So this really doesn't do much for me if I'm a Knicks fan, because really it's just swapping out two rotational pieces and they play together anyways. So I don't know. It's a really it's really the only adjustment they have besides playing Precious Achua, which I don't think Thibodeau will do. And Precious was actually, I thought he was actually pretty decent against the Pacers last year. Like, he gave them some pretty good minutes last year. There were obviously some things that he struggles with, but it's another body where this Pacer team just wears you down because they can run. Hell, we're running 12 guys out there now at times. Like, we can run 12 to 13 if we get into foul trouble. So it just, again, we talked about this last year in the postseason, this year in the postseason, that the biggest concern for the Knicks is the depth. And here it is again, rearing its head. And you have a much weaker team than they had last season. And I will say that with confidence, that even a team that didn't have Julius Randle because of injury, Mitchell Robinson because of injury, they had Anunoby running on half a leg. They had Josh Hart with the abdominal strain or whatever that was. Jalen Brunson broke his hand. I mean, everybody on that team was hurt, it seemed. They were still a better team because they fought better. Dante DiVincenzo is a pacer killer. So it just, Alec Burks, like, it just, they felt better last year. And this year I felt like it was a good addition to go get Cat. They're a great regular season team. He scores a lot of points, and he probably score a lot of points, and he likes playing at Gainbridge. He's always scored well against the Pacers. So I would be shocked if Cat has a 30-point game and Brunson has a 25, 30-point game. But I just feel like at the end of the games, when the Pacers are in it, they're going to win these games. If they are within reach in the fourth, and that's saying a lot, because hell, it seems like 15 points in the last 2 minutes is in reach for this team because of how good they've been in those crazy comeback wins that are improbable and historic. This Pacer team is just such a problem for the Knicks. And while the Knicks prepared themselves to beat Boston, they didn't think about who they might have to play should Boston be the team they had to play in the semifinals, and then they're going to have to play even Cleveland or the Pacers. They weren't really built, and I don't think they would have. They don't think they would have beat the Cavs. Like, I really think they would have struggled with Cleveland too, because if the Cleveland's healthy, they present a huge problem for the Knicks because Mobley and Jarrett Allen. So I don't know. We can talk about that all day and talk about the what ifs, but it just seems like the Knicks were so focused on beating Boston, they forgot about all the other teams that play in this league. So that's the problem. The Knicks are in a lot of different predicaments because of just what the Pacers have been able to do to them in the last 2 years. They've exposed everything that they are as far as weaknesses, strengths. The Knicks have just not been able to handle the Pacers, and that's been a big bonus. And we hope that continues through Game 3. Obviously, when you have a scorer like Cat and Brunson, anything's possible because they can go for 30 each, and then that can be difficult to beat a team like that. Hell, they could even go for 40. So I don't think it's over by any stretch. Like, you still got to go out and beat this team because they're still a good team. I just think the Pacers at the end of the day have such an advantage, especially being up 2-0, especially having more home games than the Knicks have left. And yeah, that's why I think that the Pacers are set up very well to advance to the first finals in 25 years. Pacers adjustments, the only thing I can think of, Tony Bradley getting his 6 to 8 minutes. I think that's still a possibility. I don't know if they probably do go to Thomas Bryant, but I don't know. If things get sketchy, then they move to Tony Bradley. I don't know if they go right away to Tony, but if things get hairy and Thomas Bryant's just not blocking out and get rebounds to Mitchell and Mitchell's owning him. The other thing too is if they move Mitchell to the starting lineup, that kind of impacts what they'll do. I think the Pacers. Do you put Tony Bradley in with the first subs? Like, I don't know. That becomes a little bit more of a different question. I think if Mitchell Robinson's starting, I don't know if you see Tony Bradley as much. What can the Knicks do to throw Indy off? More bodies? Question mark. They're not going to do it, but that seems to be the answer. I'd at least throw Precious Achua because he at least he's played in these kind of games before. That would be my answer, but they're not going to do that. Thibodeau's so stubborn. Tempo, the Knicks have to play a half-court offense, but usually the tempo in Indy is exactly always what the Pacers want. So that's going to be very difficult for the Knicks. And if they got Mitchell Robinson out there, the Pacers are just going to fly at him. I mean, as good as he is on the defensive side of things, I still think that your best thing is maybe you struggle early, but you just run it right at them if they're throwing two bigs out there, because I just don't think they know how to play like that. So, and they don't communicate very well when Mitchell and Towns and Brunson are all out there together. Josh Hart, I think, is a much better matchup guarding Tyrese than Mikal Bridges. Like, Bridges is okay at times, and I think the idea was Bridges has the length to stay up with Tatum. They didn't think about, well, now he's the primary defender. He's going to have to go guard Tyrese Halliburton. He's much quicker. Like, Tyrese is much quicker. He beats Mikal Bridges quite often. I mean, there's moments where even Nesmith, Nembhard, and Pascal beat Bridges off the dribble. I don't think Bridges is too fleet of foot, and that's a problem because Tyrese can get to the spots he wants to get to, and his denied defense isn't anything. Like, Tyrese gets the ball. It was a lot different in sometimes games against the Cavs where Strus did an okay job. And it was different against the Bucks, where sometimes Porter Jr. did pretty well, or Gary Trent, or whoever was guarding him, did pretty well getting Tyrese the ball out of his hand and forcing Nembhard to be the primary ball handler. I just don't feel like Mikal Bridges can do that. And nor can they afford to. Like, that's the other thing too, is when you don't have a deep team, when you don't have good, reliable people off the bench, your starters aren't going to go as hard defensively because they know they got to play a lot of games. They got to conserve energy. So I think that's another issue that the Knicks have had defensively, is they know they can't exert effort on the defensive side of the ball because the Pacers will just run them right into the ground. So that's another issue with their depth. Win the offensive rebounding battle. If the Knicks can win it by 7-8, I mean, that the rebounding battle, that's where you could cause some problems for the Pacers. And that's what we've seen in games that the Pacers have lost with this core group, is when they get absolutely destroyed on the possession game of 50-50 balls, offensive rebounds. That's where it's tiresome for the Pacers. And then what can the Pacers do to avoid a Game 3 disappointment? That has been the theme in the postseason this year, because, again, they lost Game 3 against the Bucks, and they lost Game 3 against the Cavs. One going to Milwaukee, one coming home against the Cavs, and both disappointing Game 3 losses. Game 3 is a tough one to win when you go up 2-0. I was talking about this with the group chat I have, because the teams are just so desperate. Because if you go down 3-0, series is over. I mean, there's no other way to put it. There's no team that's ever come back from that. So that's a 3-0 is a death sentence, and the teams know that. So I expect the Knicks' best punch here. So the Pacers are going to have to do everything they can to handle a desperate Knicks team. You're going to see a heavy dose of Jalen Brunson. You're going to see a lot of Cat, and they're going to hope that that's enough. And I think you're going to get a game. I think you'll get a good game from OG or Mikal Bridges. Like, they're the kind of guys that really need to step up if they're going to have a chance in Game 3. I think you see their best punch, obviously, coming up in Game 3, and easily the most desperation this Knicks team's ever played with, which is saying a lot because their desperation is not really that noticeable at times. This is Pacers versus Racers. That energy's got to carry over from the Speedway to the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That's going to be tough because there is going to be quite a few people coming over from the race to the game. They're going to be tired because they've been there all morning drinking. And when you drink that much and you're having that much fun in the sun, standing and then sitting and baking, even though it's not that hot in Indy right now, it'll beat you down. So I'm interested to see what the volume levels are like. You would think this would be an electric crowd, but I think Game 4 will be even more electric, even if they lose this game, Game 4 will be more, I think, energetic. I don't know. I feel like there's the last time the Pacers played on race day, it did not go well. The Heat smashed the Pacers, and you did kind of feel like the crowd was restless and kind of out of it. But maybe they just continue partying. It could be dangerous, but maybe they keep partying on until the game in the Eastern Conference, and then they explode tonight. But we'll see. I'm interested to see what the crowd levels are like early on in this game, so that'll be something to monitor. We haven't seen the Pacers' best game in the series. They've played 2 of 8 quarters well, but other than that, I feel like the Knicks have actually played better basketball at times. So and that's saying a lot because the Pacers have been able to beat them. If the Pacers are on their A game, this Knicks team can't beat them. Like they just can't. So we'll see. Tempo, you got to play as fast as you can possibly play in this game. This is the game I feel like you could absolutely just, even at reckless at times, just go, like just fly, like just use that energy, feed off the home crowd, and just exert everything you've got into this game 3. Because I think if you get them to a certain point, they'll lay down. Because this team is not really a claw kind of team. Like they don't claw back as well, I don't think. So I think you could really put them down on the mat hard if you come out and punch them in the nose. I think you got to get to that kind of, obviously they're not going to go as crazy as they did in that Cavs game 4 or Bucks game 4, but if you can get somewhat to that level where you're just, scoring 35 points in the first or 70 points in the first half, like that's just going to be an absolute backbreaker. And I think they could do this. I think they could, because we haven't seen it yet. Water always finds its level, and I don't think the Pacers have played as well as they have been. Know that you're one punch away from the total knockout. Know that if you go into the fourth quarter with a 20-point lead, you're sending this Knicks team home. You're sending them home, even despite if they won in game 4. I don't know, game 5, game 6. I'm just not convinced that you can win 4 straight against this Pacer team. I don't think any team could. Bench production at home, you got to get the role players going. This is going to be a big Ben Shepherd game, I believe, and a TJ game. Like those are the 2 dudes that just feed off of energy. And although Ben doesn't really show it at times, you can tell in Ben's play when he's fired up, when he's defending, and he's done really well against Jalen Brunson. Like if I'm Rick, I might even lean more into that, play Ben a little bit more, lean into the advantage there, because I think Shep, because of his length and his explosiveness off the floor and that initial jump, he can get closer to Brunson's left hand when he does that weird over-the-shoulder spin thing that he hits every single time as if it's a layup. That dude, I think, shoots like 98% whenever he does that little spin move over his shoulder, throws it in, back and fading away, about falls over. There's another thing, too, is 2 times in this series, I know he's a baiting foul guy, but, he took Aaron Nesmith's hand in game 1 and took his own hand, Jalen Brunson's own hand, and because Nesmith's hand was over his, he took Nesmith's hand and smacked his own face with it and tried to get the foul. And the ref looked at him like, dude, what was that? Why'd you do that? That could have been an offensive foul. Like he took Aaron Nesmith's hand and smacked his own face with it so that he tried to get the foul. And then game 2, he shoots a 3. I think it was a 3. And Nembhard challenges it. He misses the 3. But Nembhard, he's like 2 feet probably from him at that time, like to the side of him. And he you can see him back his butt up to try to get him to where is he? He should have fouled me. And he was trying to I don't know. It was really weird. It was very strange. You tried to make it look like a foul 3 seconds after the ball had hit the rim. It was really odd, but it's just so foul bait. Come on, just play the freaking game. It's just annoying. Nice guy, but man, he's such a flopper. Keys for game 3. So what can the Pacers do to seal a game 3 3-0 lead? Intensity and focus. This is a game, and I keep saying this every time we have a podcast, but this truly is. I want to see the Pacers, because they're going to need this in this year's playoffs and years to come. We need that ability to just soul crush, right? We just need to absolutely lay a hammer down. We've seen this with LeBron James's teams and the Cavs and the Heat, right? We've seen this with Dallas. We've seen this with, trying to think of it, Boston. When you're down on the mat, they don't let you up. That's what the Pacers need. That's their next step. They need to turn themselves into the killers, because they are already killers, but they need to step up and turn this into we're not going to let you have any life now that we've pretty much taken all of it. So that's what I'm looking forward to and seeing in game 3. You can demoralize them tonight. If you win tonight, again, like I said, series over. It's just the numbers and everything in history has pointed to that you just don't come back from a 3-0 deficit. Offensive boards at home, keep Mitchell Robinson at bay, right? Just don't let them have second chance opportunities. Those kill moments, right? Those kill runs, those increased runs, those take the crowd out of it. Offensive rebounds can take a home crowd out of it, even if it's a tight game. It can nullify your advantage, and the Pacers do have quite an advantage going back to Gainbridge. Again, like I said, the Pacers fly at them, and then the next one, Tyrese Halliburton, got to get him going. He's not been as good at home than he has been on the road. He's been a road assassin, but he's just been all right at home. I'd love to see a big game from him. I'd love to see if John Halliburton's at the game tonight. I hope he is. That'd be cool. Because I feel like whenever John returns, that's when the Pacers will get a big boost because Tyrese. But I feel like Tyrese, his return seems imminent. It's either going to be this series or maybe if the Pacers get to the finals, then the finals. Predictions. My 5 predictions for game 3. Big night coming from the bench. I think 2 people on the bench will be in double figures. I would almost guarantee TJ McConnell will be. It'll be a question of like if it's Toppin, Mathurin, and I would even throw Ben Shepherd in there. Like I could see this being like a game we look back on and be a lot of fun where Ben's hit like 3 threes. I could see it because he's starting to feel himself, and that's good. Like when he's starting to feel like himself, Ben Shepherd is a 2 to 3 point or 2 or 3 pointer, 2 or 3 3-pointers a night kind of guy. And he'll hit, he'll get 6 to 9 points just off those threes. And they usually come in big spots to like keep a run going or to kind of settle down a long run from the other team. Hold Knicks under 100. I think that the Pacers hold the Knicks under 100. I think you see one of the best defensive intensity games that you've seen from the Pacers in this postseason in game 3. Tyrese, I think, goes for 20 and 10. Miles Turner, I would say he hits 3 threes. I think he's going to be big tonight, coming off a very good fourth quarter where he scored 13 points in game 2. And I'm going to say it now, right? I'm going to say it now. I got confidence. I feel like this is the game that we'll look back on and go, yeah, this is the Pacers team that meant business. That this is them proving they're the real deals. Because if they win game 3, I do feel like they will go on to sweep the Knicks, which would be just a nice cherry on top for all the discussions that have happened about the Pacers beating healthy teams and beating good teams. So those are my thoughts for game 3. That's my preview, my predictions. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with the prediction. Do the Pacers capture game 3? Do the Knicks, in desperation, make it a series and grab one game in Indiana to force at least a game 5 at their home in Madison Square Garden? Because that could get tough for the Pacers to have to go back to Madison Square Garden in a game 5 where the Knicks will be undoubtedly desperate because they don't want to get eliminated. Or at least close. Can the Pacers keep the Knicks, who have been really good on the road as well? That's something we didn't really mention. The Knicks have been really good on the road. They haven't lost. I think they've lost 1 game on the road. The Knicks are 2 games on the road. 2 games. Yeah, 2 games, I think. But the Knicks have been really good on the road as well in these postseason runs. So that'll be something to watch. You cannot afford, if you're Indiana, to let this go back to 2-2 and going back to the Garden, because then it's a whole different conversation. Then it's like, oh man, the Knicks might do it. The Knicks might be able to get to where they're really scaring the Pacers. But we will see. Those are some really interesting storylines heading into the game. What do the Knicks do as far as their lineup? What do the Pacers do to kind of negate the impact of Mitchell Robinson whenever that happens? And how big are the games from Karl Anthony Towns and Brunson tonight? Because that'll be key too. If you keep one of them to the 20-point mark, then the Pacers have a real good shot to win this game. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. If you listened this far, I know it was a little bit of a longer episode, but this is a really exciting time. And I know I took 25 minutes of the first part of this podcast to really talk about what the Pacers have done and how they've gotten here, and also the future of this team and what that window looks like. But I think we haven't really had that conversation. I think it's a good conversation to have leading into game 3, just because of how monumental and historic this game will be. This is, again, like I said, the biggest game in Pacers history, because I really do feel like this is the first time I've ever felt, and a lot of fans have felt, that they could really do it. They could win an NBA title. And this is, again, they win tonight, they should be in the NBA finals, like, unless something crazy happens. So thank you. It's been a lot of fun so far. Leave your comments below. What do you think about the show? What do you think about this series? Who do you want to see in the NBA Finals? Do you think Oklahoma City's there, or is Minnesota back in that series for real? Did they make it a challenging series after absolutely dominating the Thunder last night? We shall see. We are at the Pacers Fever Show on YouTube, on all social media. We're mostly posting on X and Facebook, so that's where you can find all of our content. Not really posting too much on Instagram. I think eventually we will move over to TikTok, but that's a lot more effort on my part, and I just, I'm so busy right now with the way the fever are going and with work and stuff like that. So it's been a little bit more difficult, but I think as the Pacers season comes to an end, whenever that might be, doing some content on TikTok with the Fever would be an option, and then also doing it with the Pacers when they return. So, but yeah, follow us on socials, and then you can find us on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show, where we have the video version of all the podcasts. We also put the audio versions on anywhere you can find your podcast, but mainly Apple Podcasts and Spotify is where we're getting our listens from. But other people listen on different, I think, Podbean and different things like that. So listen to wherever you listen to it on the audio version, or you can watch the video however you want to do it. Thanks again for following along, and I hope you guys are all having a safe and fun Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to all the veterans who have served. We can't do this without you all, and we don't get to enjoy this game without all the sacrifices that so many of you have made for our country. And so we are very thankful, very grateful for that, and we have an opportunity to see a special Pacers team because you all have made a very selfless sacrifice in your lives. Just thinking back to my grandfather, who just recently passed at 99, was a World War II veteran, and was a huge Pacer fan. I'm trying not to get emotional talking too much about this, but huge Pacers fan. And, whether you believe in afterlife or whatever it might be, it almost does feel like his involvement, his passing, if he's looking down on us or whatever it might be, whatever you believe in, it almost does feel like he's got a little bit of mojo on this series. We'll just leave it at that. So, but yeah, thinking about all the veterans today and thinking about the race weekend, I hope you guys are having fun. And I'm actually just ending this at 12:45. So happy Indianapolis 500. I hope all things go well for whoever you're rooting for whatever reasons you're rooting for them. So we will see you guys again after game 3, and we'll hope to be talking about how the Pacers have pushed the Knicks to the brink and eliminate them as they get one step closer to their first NBA Finals appearance since the 2000s.